Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. It's so like 9 o'clock. Did you have a good party last night? No? Yeah. And I'm Emily Jiang, and from IBM. Today, I'm going to build a 12-factor microservice on stage. So I will do a lot of coding. So, but I view this coding is pair programming. If it doesn't work, it's also your responsibility. Okay, just remind me to save. I always forget to save. If it's not working properly, I haven't saved. Okay, a little bit about myself. I'm a Java champion. And also I'm STSM is a senior technical staff member in IBM. I'm the Liberty lead architect for MicroProfile and CDI. Anybody know MicroProfile already? Oh, brilliant. This is wonderful. This is my third time at DevOps UK. First time when I came, only probably a couple hands up to show actually they heard of MicroProfile. So it's hopefully in this session you will get to know a lot about MicroProfile as well. Also, as heavily involved in the spec MicroProfile config for tolerance service mesh. Do you all know Kubernetes and Istio? Okay, so this is like a MicroProfile, Kubernetes, and Istio is the three things that you should learn if you are doing microservices. And also I'm the configure JSR code spec lead and CDI EG. I work for IBM at Hersley Lab in the UK. So anybody heard of the Hersley Lab? Okay, great. So it's if you go to Winchester area, just close that area, I highly recommend it. You pay a visit to this site. It's very special. In the rural area, it has a historic building there. So it's really nice and peaceful. If you want to get connected, follow me on Twitter and get connected with me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, you feel free to email me. So in this session, I will give you a quick theory update about what is 12-factor. So, and then followed majority time will be done on the coding. So in the coding, I will create one microservice, and then I will create another one, trying to link calling the previous one, and also trying to configure them. So in today's session, I want you leave the room with at least on one of the 3 points. One is my personal kind of tips. If you want to doing well in IT, you have to keep learning, and don't think you know the best. There's new things that popping up all the time. So what you think is best practice may not be true. So every day you should spend some time to look what's coming up. The second tip, if you haven't done microservices, you should get your heads down to microservice. Anybody is doing microservice already? Oh, that's great. And if you are doing microservices, you need to ask yourself, are you doing the best practices way? Is the most efficient way? Is your microservice fit for the cloud? So this is the second one. The third one is if you are not using MicroProfile, I do recommend that you spend some time to look into MicroProfile and spend probably half an hour to try out MicroProfile. And then you can say, oh no, it's good. If you say it's good, or if it's not your cup of tea, that's all fine, but you should just give it a go. Okay, this is the 12-factor. Anybody already heard of 12-factor? Oh, that's great. So I don't need to spend much time. So this is a 12-factor is kind of published by Heroku. It's a methodology, but it doesn't tell you how, right? So today I'm showing you how. So for the ones who has not known 12-factor, basically I put in one sentence is declare the boundary between the application and the infrastructure. So this is the longer explanation. So the first one is just define the boundaries. The second one you think is that your microservice will be uploaded to the cloud. Is that fit for the cloud purpose? And also, you should think about your continuous CI/CD pipeline. So you develop once, and then you keep on updating. So you need to think about CI/CD. And the following one, your microservice should be able to scale. Basically, when it's busy, can scale up. When it's not busy, can scale down. This is 12 factor. That's it. Database, dependencies, config, all this. So I will go through each quickly. So and then I will explain a little bit by coding. I mentioned MicroProfile. I want for the ones who has not heard of MicroProfile, is a complete open source community, and to evolve the best programming model for doing Java-based microservices. The main purpose for the MicroProfile is want to make sure the Java developers have the best skill for doing microservices. So originally it was initiated by IBM, Red Hat, LJC, London Java Community, and Tommy Choi, Payara, and etc. If you have been to last night's party, one of the sponsors is MicroProfile. Right? Yeah. So you know who is paying the drink and food. It's a completely community-driven. So I am very passionate individual in MicroProfile. So any of you, if you want to contribute to MicroProfile, just feel free to join microprofile.io or talk to me afterwards. There's no reference implementation for this programming model. All the implementations are equal. And we release spec APIs in the Maven Central. So it's all free. It's Apache version 2 license. And all the spec is in the GitHub repository as well. So, and it's evolved very fast. And from now on, every year we have 3 major releases. Okay. Now I go through all the 12 factors. The first one is the code base. Basically, the code base is the same. If you do microservices, each microservice should have its own individual project, individual GitHub repository. Do you share? Anybody doing this practice already? Okay, cool. So if you haven't done that, you try to make sure in the future when you create a microservice, make sure it has a dedicated project and dedicated GitHub. The reason is it can evolve itself. And it's like a single team can work on it, and also it have its own release cycle. The second one is the dependencies. Nowadays we either do Maven or Gradle. Who else is using Maven? Oh, brilliant. Gradle? Okay, I think Maven is the majority. So it's you specify the dependencies as Maven. If you are doing Maven or Gradle, you specify your dependencies in the if you are doing Maven in the POM XML, and do not package your libraries inside your application, because you want to make sure in the future when you evolve or doing any security fixes, and you can automatically consume that. Not you just package your own copy, and then it's your own responsibility if something goes wrong. Okay, the next one is the config. So anybody, if you are doing microservices, are you can externalize your configuration already? Oh, that's excellent. So it's this is very important. It's one is a really important factor in the 12-factor methodology. The reason is because once you deploy your microservice in the cloud, and you want to sometimes behave differently, but you do not want to have to redo your code and upload to the cloud again, and then like switch out the old version, switch in the new version. You want it very sleek. So basically, you put the config in the infrastructure, and your microservice will behave differently. So this is config. So if you use the config, if you use Kubernetes already, I'll go back, and do you use config map? Right, good. Secrets? Excellent. So these two things are very useful for configuring your microservices. You configure your microservices in the config map, either in the config map or secret, and directly inject the value into your application. So these are backend services. So this is a talk about, obviously, your microservices will have like calling some other microservices or have the database connections. You treat this one as attached resources. They should be configurable as well. You should be able to swap in the database or swap out the database or switch the underlying services and etc. And then build, release, and run. So they should have a distinct stage. So which one is build, and then release, and then put in the production. So you should consider about which CI/CD pipeline you should use. No, there's a lot like a product for you to choose from. In the IBM, we have IBM private cloud. We have the really good CI/CD pipeline, Urban Code, Deploy, and etc. Similarly for AWS Azure. So this one. So process. So the process is basically, you should treat the process as a RESTful API and stateless. So basically it hasn't got any state. So this is why we should do this stateless. It's because when you upload your microservice to the cloud, when it's very busy, you underlying cloud infrastructure can scaling up and scale down. And if it scale up, if it has a state, and then the state will get lost. So this is why. So the port binding. So this is a talk about microservices. It's all in the cloud, and then they talk to each other. And when they talk to each other, obviously, you need to find out their backend, that they're the host and a port. So if the port is hard-coded in the one microservice, and then when you upload it to the cloud, Kubernetes will change the port value. So, and then you no longer can connect to the backend. So this is always make sure you can inject the port. So the port should not be hard-coded and should always be configurable. Concurrency. This I talk a lot. Concurrency. This is about the infrastructure can scale up your microservices when it's really in high demand, or shrink your microservice when it's less busy, so that you do not need to pay unnecessary payment when you upload to the cloud, and so you can just use the necessary cloud infrastructure for running your microservices. So you know this one. If you know Kubernetes already, you know now you can do the auto scale as well. So if you don't do auto scale, and nowadays if you do a static, you do a replicas. So you can specify how many replicas or how many instances of the containers are. So this is concurrency. So the disposability. So this disposability. So this is a talk about the microservice should be treated as cattle, not pet, right? So all of them are same. They don't have a personality. This is mentioned quite a lot. This reason is because you want to scale up or scale down. And if you have pet, if the pet gets sick, you have a personal attachment to it. You have to take it to take the pet to the vet and look after it. But for microservices, if it's a cattle, because this sounds very brutal, and you don't have any personal attachment to it. So this is a pet and cattle. And the other thing is that this should be resilient. It's bulletproof. It should be working all the time. And I mean, under whatever the circumstances are, it should always be functioning. This is you should remember all the time. The microservices you are building should be fault tolerant, and also should start up very fast and also shut down very fast as well. In this case, it's because you do not want to pay the unnecessary cloud resources, and also you want to serve your client as fast as possible. Okay, this is the dev prod parity. So this is why Docker is coming into play. Are you do you use Docker already? Oh, that's brilliant. So later I just quickly show the Docker. So Docker is come to rescue here. So it's Docker solves the problem, the dev product parity. Basically, once it's running well in the like a development environment, you package everything and create a container, and it's kind of running everywhere, and it's the same as production. So you should keep the dev product as simple as same as possible. And also when you deploy to them like a service mesh or Kubernetes, etc., and remember to use a Helm. And Helm. Anybody know Helm already? Okay, if you haven't, and Anna Marie over there somewhere, I did a quite good talk yesterday. So if you haven't been there, and watch YouTube to get to know Helm. So this is a great way to deploy your microservice to Kubernetes. And the logs. So this is really interesting. The logs. There's a kind of at a moment, and a few days ago, we had a long conversation in MicroProfile about logging. So it's for the logging. So any of you use the JDK logger? Okay. What kind of logging do you use? What kind of logging framework? Log4j? Okay. What's that? Sorry? Logback. Oh, Logback. Okay, that's okay, good. Interesting. And we are trying to standardize or kind of consolidate the best practice for doing logging. So some people are thinking like the user JDK logger is your microservice can be portable among different containers and etc. Would love to hear what you think about logging. So afterwards, you can come to talk to me if you have any special ideas about logging. So basically, however, in this talk about this logging, 12 factors strongly recommend you treat a log as event stream, so it can stream out. So the other thing is you can directly write to standard output, so that can directly feed into the ELK. The reason is if you store in the data store and etc., or in the file, once that container goes down, and everything will get lost. Admin processes. So when you do the microservices, and sometimes you need to do the database migration. However, you do not put the code up the database migration inside your microservices, because this is one-off. You should just do it as a kind of special tooling. So it's special jobs. Okay, so this is pretty much all the 12 factors. And so it's 12 factors, and most of them can be done. Is kind of you just think just think carefully, and it can be sorted by either Docker or Kubernetes, and some others, like you need to make sure when you code up your application, like a config, port binding, and disposition, and backing service, and processes, and you should rely on the programming model to help you out. So there's two very important MicroProfile specs that can help you to help you to do them to affect microservices. So one of them is config. So this config is to fulfill the purpose, the requirement of externalizing your configuration. So this MicroProfile config, it has two kind of APIs. One is the programmatic API, one is the CDI injection. So the programmatic API, you just get config provider, get config to get a config object, and then you can get a value, and then the first parameter is the property name, and then the type. And a CDI way, anybody know CDI? Okay. The rest of you have not heard of CDI. Do you know a Spring config? Okay, cool. If you know Spring config, it's kind of not Spring config, Spring injection. Do you know Spring injection? Okay, cool. If you know Spring injection, CDI auto inject equivalent to auto wired. Basically, it's directly inject into it. Yeah. So CDI injection, you do a auto inject a config property, and that's a property name, and then directly into inject into the parameter MicroProfile v. So this is the code snippet. So you can directly inject. The first one is the static injection. As we know, CDI is static by nature. If you really want to get a dynamic value, you need to inject a proxy, which is a provider. So the other concept of the MicroProfile config is all the config sources have priority. So it's if you specify the same property in the multiple config sources, the config source with the highest priority will feed into your application. The second one is the fault tolerance. The fault tolerance, we have this set of annotations. It has a retry, obviously. If it doesn't work, it does retry. A circuit breaker, this prevents from repeated failures. Once it's failed for so many times, it directly return back with the failure. This one, the bulkhead, is the limit microservices from utilizing all of the resources. You will get resource starvation. So this is a timeout. This is kind of if you do not respond in the specified time, you will get timeout straight away. This is fallback. This is last resort resolution. If you call into the backend, if it doesn't respond, and if you can retry, you can do some other things. If it's still not working, you should always think about fallback. So it's you come up with your own resolution. Okay, let's get to coding part. So it's you will ask, okay, you tell me about MicroProfile, tell me about a theory, and now is how can I create a microservice and using these best practices. This is the first one is the MicroProfile starter. So basically, it's the equivalent to the Spring initializer. So it will create a Maven project for you. If you want to know, all the MicroProfile specifications with coding examples, log on to the openliberty.io guides. It will teach you all MicroProfile specifications with explanation, with code examples. Any of you knows Open Liberty? Nobody? Oh, few. Good. Open Liberty is an open source project. Open source project has a full implementation of MicroProfile and Java EE, and later on Jakarta EE is from IBM. So it's if you haven't heard of Open Liberty, also directly try it out. When you do the guide, you will get some flavor of it. And then we have a booth downstairs, and we have a quick lab for you to know Open Liberty and MicroProfile is about 15-20 minutes, and so you're welcome to come around. Okay, now I have exactly the 25 minutes, so let's get started. So I'm going to create first. I'm going to create a microservice, right? I'm going to create a RESTful microservice. So what do I do first? I go to this starter. I do so it's I do a service B, create a service B, and then as a version MicroProfile version, I use the latest one, and the MicroProfile server. So it's a MicroProfile server. You have a lot to choose from. So you have Soundtail, Open Liberty, Cumulusium, Payara. If you do the earlier version, you can see that there's even more. So you have like Helidon from Oracle, Tommy E, and etc. Let me just do the latest one, and I choose Open Liberty. So in here, I just want to create a RESTful microservice. I want to have a health check. I directly do that. Save that. So I have this zip already. I go to, here is the SB in my download. So you can choose your favorite editor. So I use Eclipse, I use IntelliJ, I use VS Code, and today I just use the Eclipse. So I'm in the download, SB, open. Here, the code. So you can see here, I generate the hello controller and also the REST. This is the REST JAX-RS microservices. If you know Spring, this is equivalent to Spring Boot. This is the resource. It's similar to MVC, Spring MVC. So now it's and also I have a health check. If you use Kubernetes and etc., in Kubernetes you can do a liveness and readiness check. So this one, to directly feed into that, you can directly. And later on, if we have time, I will show you how to use this as well. Okay, now I go to my command window. I go to download, make it bigger. I go to SB. I just do a Maven clean install. And then I can directly do a Java manage jar. Oh, no, I will do this step by step. So it will first, we will download the latest Open Liberty image. Open Liberty does monthly release, so it's every month we have release. Now it's use the latest one, is 1904. So now finished. So is in the target. I have a sb.jar. can directly start it. So now I go to the, now it started. So you can see here, so it tell me here where is the endpoint. So you have the hello endpoint and just say hello world. That's easy, right? Now, in here, actually, in the SB, I want to do something. Let's see. I can say I want to identify this is a service B, DevOps. And also, I want, for example, I want to put a bug in. Basically, it's, maybe it's a simulator. Actually, sometimes you do have bug. So I just directly to say if, I mean the third one, I want it fail. If it's this one, I want throw runtime exception. I know. You haven't. That's easy. So now it's in the SB. I can directly queue it. Okay, while it's doing that, let's create another microservice. You know, in microservice is not standalone. So basically, is you want to have your microservice talk to the other microservice. So this is the microservice B. I want to create another microservice to talk to this microservice. So how do I do that? So now I create as a So SA, again, I use this. I want to use Open Liberty again. So I don't want to do too many things. So I have a SA. Now I import the SA. So this is my SA. So again, is the code is kind of similar, right? You have a controller, and you have a REST, and however the port. So it's because it's the same port. Actually, I want to change the port. I want to change to 9080. Because it cannot bind to the same port in under the same host. So, and also, and it's currently there's a MicroProfile 2.2 release, OpenLiberty already implemented. So the starter now is trying to add to the list, but I can easy to use that straight away. So I can just change the version there. And also in the Liberty, we have a server XML. So I can just say I want to use 2.2. Okay. Let's see the other microservice. Is sometimes, yeah, that's a service B and sometimes not working, right? Yeah, see that? So now I'm going back here. So this is my service A. So I want service A call into service B. How do I know what kind of APIs service B have? So I can just do, there's an open API here. So microservice automatically give you the open API backend. So this is service B is your URL is I know is say hello, and also the response is a string. So I can directly create it. So however, I can copy it from my previous. So save time. So here, the service B one is SB. So I can directly see here my backend. So my backend is this HTTP localhost 808181. This is the backend, and then this is the API I want to directly call into. And you would think, you would say, okay, you said in the 12 factor you don't hard code the port and etc. All this can be configured by using Kubernetes config map. Okay, now is I define the API there. Now in the controller. So here, I don't want to say hello myself. Instead, I say add inject, say REST client, service B client, service B. So here I can say hello from I can delete this. Save it. Okay, now I create, I go to the new do. Let's see. So I do a Java manage jar target. Let's see. It says my endpoint is this. Yeah, it worked. See, it's a hello from service B and it's from DevOps. And sometimes it's not working, right? Why is it not working sometimes? Because sometimes the backend is not working, right? So now, because in the 12-factor app, I said you should create a fault tolerance microservice. And you may not, know who is working on service B, or maybe service B, your backend is controlled by some other team or some other companies. How do you make sure you can always fix a problem yourself? Any suggestions? Okay, I mentioned the MicroProfile fault tolerance earlier, so it has some annotations. So I know it's sometimes not working. So I can easily, I just say retry. I retry. Okay, I mean redeploy it. So it will redeploy them. So while it's doing that, and I also talked about the configuration. In the configuration, I already, like in MicroProfile config, it automatically can get all the configuration from environment variable, system property, and also is pre-packed MicroProfile-configure properties. So in here, my SA here, I have the resources. I have this. So it's if I have like a username, for in that DevOps UK, I have this username. I can easily inject into my application, into my service. So I can, how do I do it? I just do inject config property. So I want to inject username. Is a string username. So I can say anyway, it's gibberish, the string. You get the point. Let's go back to see my microservice here. You can see hello from service B. It's working all the time, right? Yeah, it's that simple. Okay, now I did that the config, so I will try it again. So it automatically get the config from the config from the MicroProfile-config.properties. The other thing is because I mentioned here, it's a hard-coded kind of config properties. You will say this is hard-coded. If you change the value, obviously you have to repackage your application. The beauty is because all the configure source kind of have priority. So this is the lowest priority configure source. It has priority 100, and system property has a config like a priority. We call it ordinal 400, and environment variable is 300. In the config map, in the Kubernetes config map, it can directly map to your environment variable, which is has a priority 300. You can automatically overwrite this. So let me see whether it's yeah, get it? DevOps UK as my config. So this is pretty much I have demoed like how simple and easy to use micro profile to do 12-factor. So today's takeaway, 12-factor, if you want to do it, just use MicroProfile together with Kubernetes. Early on, I mentioned all the port binding and also the, how do you configure it dynamically in the infrastructure. I have GitHub repository to directly demonstrate how to get it going. I have a 12-factor app A, 12-factor app B, and also I have a deployment with full instruction to how to set up Minikube and get it going. This is an example of the deployment YAML file. Early on in my application, I said base URI, I hard-coded localhost 8181 and /sb data help data hello, and you can directly overwrite it in the in your Kubernetes YAML file. Here you can just fully qualified class name and underscore mp underscore rest URL. You directly point to the what the backend is. So and also is like your backend can be mapped to the Kubernetes the cluster IP as well. This is the other thing I mentioned. In my demo, I have a health check. The health check is used to tell Kubernetes whether your pod is healthy or not. You can directly configure like this. You do a Leibniz probe HTTP GET. You can see it. Can you? Yeah. And then this is just to tell you this is HTTP GET and /health. The port you can directly configure to anything 9081. And this is the initial delay. Second is when you deploy this port and how long do you want to delay to be, for the Kubernetes to probe this endpoint to find out whether the pod is healthy or not. Similarly, the readiness probe, you can do the initial delay, and also you can configure the period as well. So this is pretty much all the things, and I just show you the my GitHub 12-factor. So this is my GitHub repository. So it directly tell you install Minikube, and also you change it to this one, do the Docker image, and build a Docker image, and then you can directly run it in the container mode in the Kubernetes in the Minikube. And with the remaining time, I have a quick Dockerfile here. Let me see. So this is I want to say that this is a Docker file. So basically, in Open Liberty, we have a MicroProfile to this Docker image contain the latest MicroProfile release image. You can directly do that and then directly copy the build artifact, and then build your Docker image. And then Docker first, and then Kubernetes, and then you will think about service mesh Istio. In MicroProfile, also we have the MicroProfile Istio to tell you how to do the best practice microservice deploy to Istio. With that, I think that's all for you. Can I have a quick selfie with you? Just show my boss. I have been here. Actually, DevOps UK is one of my favorite conferences. I was in KubeCon in Beijing earlier this week, so I directly flew from Beijing and directly come to KubeCon without going home first. See how devoted I am. Here I go. Please make a funny face if you want. This one, down that one, this one. See, I have been to 2 conferences. I love you guys. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I don't have time to answer a question. If you have a question, I will be at IBM booth.